interrupt this program to bring you Courage, the Cowardly Dog Month.
Whole month of Courage, the Cowardly Dog. First appearing in 1996, it was picked up by Cartoon Network, who work in the middle of Burbank, and directed by cartoonist John Dilworth. Though many years have passed since the original air date, it's now time for Zack to celebrate this great show.
Well, old sport, what do you think? Neat. Hey guys, Zack here, and welcome back to Courage Month. So today's episodes we're going to be reviewing our Courageous Cure and Ball of Revenge. So let's get into both of those. Okay, so this first episode, Courageous Cure, is about a group of aliens who are actually dying out, and the bags are unwillingly recruited to help them. So it starts off by introducing us to Captain Lazo and his scientific assistant Jay, who come to Earth in their UFO. Long story short, they explain at the start of the episode that the reason they're coming to Earth is because their race is apparently dying out because of a disease. So the way this disease is described is that it causes the alien race that these guys are to beat themselves up with each of their 6 limbs, which causes them to wind up hurting themselves and just slowly beat themselves out of existence. So the reason they're coming to Earth is because according to Jay, the Earth people, us humans, we don't beat ourselves up. We only beat each other up. So they figured that was probably that because humans actually don't beat themselves up and only beat each other up. They thought it would be a good idea to kidnap a couple of them, hybridize them, and develop a cure. So with that, they then show up over the Bag farmhouse and using a giant shovel from the bottom of their ship, actually wind up scooping up the Bag farmhouse and pulling it into the UFO. And Muriel, Courage, and Eustace are asleep at the time, so they don't fully understand it. Muriel kind of feels like she's having that weird flying dream again, like she mentioned in the previous episode. But Eustace merely tells her to go to sleep and think about sleeping instead of thinking about flying. But in any case, the result of that is that they are unwittingly scooped up into the UFO and carried off. And then later that morning, Muriel's alarm clock goes off, and they wind up waking up with Muriel saying that it's going to be a really good day. So naturally they wake up and get ready for the morning routine with Eustace kicking Courage out of the bedroom and down the stairs to go get his newspaper. So Courage gets up. So Courage, after that bit of a rude awakening, actually goes out the front door to go get Eustace's newspaper, but notices it's a little too bright for a morning day, and is actually having a hard time seeing, and he also notices 2 shapes out in the distance. So he puts on some sunglasses and notes that the things he's seeing are actually Captain Lazo and Jay. And upon seeing these 2 aliens standing in front of him, he actually freaks out a little bit and screams so hard that he actually winds up turning himself inside out, with Muriel merely remarking that he should put his clothes on. At which point Courage stops her when she's going into the kitchen and tries to explain what's going on, but she merely responds that she'd be happy to make him blueberry pancakes, which is apparently what she thought he was saying. But then she winds up getting scooped up by a giant mechanical hand and is pulled out of the farmhouse, and Eustace shortly after, because Eustace doesn't fully understand what is going on as well. He just thinks they're making breakfast, but he winds up but in any case, the bags wind up being dragged out of their farmhouse into a bit of a rude awakening and placed in their main laboratory bubble that's inside their spaceship. At which point Jay and Lazo actually properly introduce themselves and explain the situation. Eustace isn't really listening. He's just continuing to complain about breakfast, while Courage is just freaked out about the whole situation and doesn't fully understand what's going on, and is trying to just figure out what it is that's actually going on, since obviously they're inside a giant spaceship, and Courage is obviously freaking out over that. But in any case, Jay and Lazo then proceed to explain how the reason they've actually abducted the bags is because of the disease. They're trying to find a cure for them, and they actually want the bags' help in that. And yeah, again, Eustace is reluctant to help because obviously he just wants his breakfast. But Muriel decides that it would be a very neighborly thing to do, which Courage tries to point out as a really bad idea. But in any case with that, Jay then proceeds to pull a little slider on his console, which causes a bunch of plungers on tubes to actually come down and stick themselves to the bags. With Courage trying to wrestle them off since they don't fully understand, since none of them fully understand what's happening, and he believes and he sees that they're kind of sort of in pain, so he tries to face off, but Jay and Lazo merely remark that they only need help from the ones that walk upright, and that Courage can actually take a load off, as it were. So they pluck him up using a mechanical hand, and then proceed to foil wrap him to a recliner so that he doesn't interfere again. But in case, since they note that the bags are freaking out, Captain Lazo actually has Jay explain what's going on, which is that they're actually infusing their DNA into the bags so that they can hybridize them and make them into hybrid beings, so that they can actually get antibodies from them and use that to make a cure. And while Muriel has no problem with that, she does wonder what exactly is going to happen to them if the cure doesn't work. But the two of them give a vague answer, which doesn't really ease their fears at all. But in any case, once the hybridization process kicks in, they start developing oddities on their body. Muriel actually winds up getting a bobblehead neck and winds up growing branches out of her ears. But while Eustace winds up growing a cow out of his stomach and extra eyes out of his forehead, and then eventually they grow extra arms like the aliens do. With Courage just kind of freaking out the whole time because obviously this isn't normal. But in any case, now that they've developed their DNA, and have actually become accustomed to the DNA, Captain Lazo and Jay then proceed to inject them with the virus serum to see what happens when they actually react to it, and it does wind up working. They actually wind up turning into a bit of a greenish color, but it doesn't wind up working as Jay and Lazo were actually thinking, because as it turns out, it winds up becoming a complete and abject failure, and they start beating each other up anyway. At which point, Courage actually tries to free himself again, but he realizes he can't, and then he sees an alien cat nearby, and he actually winds up tricking the cat into actually cutting up the upholstery so that he can actually get free, and proceeds to try and free Eustace and Muriel, who are currently fighting with themselves, and also in the process, the two of them actually wind up dislodging the pipes that were on them, which causes virus serum to fall on top of Jay and Lazo as well, and they wind up beating themselves up as well. At which point Courage tries to actually help Muriel deal with her arms to actually restrain them, and Eustace has figured out how to face off against his extra limbs as well, but they wind up setting off the eject system on the ship while he's trying to deal with them, so he winds up going overboard and winds up landing on another hostile alien planet, which I'll get to in a minute because that happens at the end of the episode. But in any case, while Courage is actually helping Muriel fight off her extra arms, he winds up getting one of the nozzles actually winds up landing on his face, and he winds up drinking some of the virus, but which everybody understandably freaks out, because at current, everybody who's been infected with the virus has started beating themselves up. Captain Lazo and Jay and the bags are all beating themselves up at this point, except for Eustace, who had figured out how to defeat it, but then wind up ejecting himself out of the ship. But in case Courage does kind of freak out a little bit, because he obviously drank a very dangerous virus that has almost killed an entire alien race. So obviously everybody's freaking out, but then several minutes go by and nothing happens. At which point Jay and Lazo realize, hey, maybe we can get the cure from Courage, and so they decide to actually try and inject Courage with her DNA, but Jay actually can't reach his console because he's too busy fighting with himself to actually get to the switch. So Courage actually winds up having to help him, and winds up pulling on the little slider to actually re-inject the DNA all over the place. So Courage then proceeds to drink the DNA, and after briefly turning into an ear of corn, he winds up, and then developing into a watermelon. He does wind up growing extra arms with with Jay merely remarking that now Courage is ready to produce serum, and Courage, realizing that they actually have a sprinkler system built into the ship, decides to use that to his advantage to actually cure them all in one fell swoop. So he actually winds up ripping out the pipe that connects the sprinkler system to the water supply, and stabs it into his newfound watermelon body, which just causes watermelon juice to sprinkle everywhere and cure everybody. And now that everybody is cured, they proceed to return Muriel and Courage back to the Bag farmhouse, which is still on their ship, and proceeds to actually extract the cure from Courage, with Jay remarking that it's enough of a cure to actually cure everybody, with Lazo responding by drinking exactly half of it and stating that it has a unpleasant taste to it. So yeah, they don't have enough to cure everybody now, but that's beside the point. But in any case, now that they've gotten what they need out of Courage and Muriel, they actually return them to normal, and by extracting their DNA using a DNA extraction tool, and with that, Jay and Lazo then proceed to plop the Bag farmhouse back into its hole where it came from, and proceed to fly off. And Muriel is merely happy with that everything is back to normal, but then wonders when Eustace is actually going to get back, and he's not going to get back because he wound up landing on an alien planet that is being spoon-fed by a giant alien that lives there. So yeah, he's not beating himself up anymore, which is an odd continuity error in this episode, but he does wind up on an alien planet. So yeah, unfortunately he's never coming home. But in any case, yeah, this episode is just interesting and fun, and that I think this is like the last instance of an alien showing up in the show. So it is a very fun episode for that, and I do enjoy seeing all the different types of aliens that the show has introduced, because they like to go back to that well a lot. But it is interesting seeing all the different types of aliens that have appeared on the show, and I do like the variety that they've had, and all the different motivations that they've had for actually showing up at the Bag farmhouse and causing problems. So some of them have been good, some of them have been evil, some of them have just done evil things for good reasons. So all of them are very interesting in their own right. But in any case, that is my review of Courageous Cure. Onward to the next review. Okay, so this episode, Ball of Revenge, is actually the 100th overall episode of Courage the Cowardly Dog, and was made to kind of commemorate that point. Ironically enough, it is widely considered the weakest episode of the bunch, but I kind of like it. It's kind of an entertaining little watch. This is one of those episodes that definitely calls attention to the fact that the show doesn't really have a firm continuity. And it becomes very apparent when you watch the episode that they just kind of didn't really care about the whole continuity and just focused on the overall canon, basically the premise is all of Courage's worst villains show up to actually take him out once and for all. And it is a very interesting episode setup. So it starts off with Muriel actually making a new blanket, which we believe is initially for Eustace, since he currently has this very ratty blanket that he's using to actually keep himself warm, and he's hoping that Muriel will actually finish it up soon so he can actually get a new blanket. But then we find out that the blanket actually isn't for him. As it turns out, Muriel has actually made Courage a new blanket because, as she puts it, Eustace has his chair and Courage doesn't really have anything. As far as we know, he doesn't even have a dog bed. He just has a food bowl, and that's it. Which Eustace finally decides is the last straw, and complains about how Courage always gets everything around the house. And has decided that enough is enough, and then storms off into the kitchen grumbling. With Muriel merely remarking that he'll likely just need a bit to cool off. But in any case, what we find out is that Eustace is actually dialing up an operator to get a couple of numbers, and he decides that it's time to actually get rid of the quote unquote get rid of the stupid dog for good. Later in the basement, Eustace, wearing a disguise, actually winds up assembling a group of Courage's worst enemies in the basement, consisting of Cats and LaQuack, of course, because they're the primary and secondary antagonists respectively. But then you've also got Black Puddle Queen, Cajun Fox, Big Toe, and the Weremole, who are all there to basically form Eustace's Sinister Six, as it were. So Eustace winds up rallying him to a common cause, which is to destroy Courage once and for all, and they all celebrate and cheer, pointing out that they now have everything they need to actually assemble and get ready to take down Courage once and for all. But in any case, Muriel and Courage themselves have actually been out of the house all day, revealed that they've actually left to go get groceries, and that now Muriel has everything that she needs to make Courage's special vinegar liver dog food, which he hates. So yeah, clearly she's not really thinking straight. But in any case, they proceed to bring into the groceries into the house right as Eustace is raising a chant of destroy the dog in the basement. So yeah, they walk in. They hear the chanting from the other villains in the basement, and Muriel merely knocks on the basement door to wonder what Eustace is actually doing down there. And Eustace doesn't really have a straight answer for her when he opens the door. He just kind of denies the fact that there's anything going on and just claims that it's a men's club. And that there's no dogs or women allowed. But he does remark that they can bring down sandwiches. So Muriel decides to go make some sandwiches while Courage kind of stirs his soup and broth for something. I think is dog food. But in any case, when Eustace comes back down, the rest of the villains actually ask them what his plan is and how they're actually going to take down the dog. At which point Eustace suggests that they actually use Muriel as bait to lower Courage down. Since the one thing he's noticed across the entire run of the series is that Courage always prioritizes her safety first over his. And that if Muriel is actually brought down and used as bait, it will no doubt cause Courage to come down, and that's when they actually ambush him, which they decide is a very sound plan. Except for Big Toe's pinky, which Muriel remarks that he's just upstairs, and they should really just go and grab him while they have the advantage. But Big Toe merely shuts him up. So it's at this point where Muriel actually finishes her sandwiches and tells Courage to keep stirring the broth or else it'll burn. So Courage just kind of continues to stir the broth while she goes down the basement to bring all of the villains' sandwiches. And the villains all disguise themselves by using newspapers to actually hide their faces, while Eustace just kind of sits there and accepts the sandwiches from Muriel. And it almost works until Black Puddle Queen actually exposes herself by reaching out to grab a sandwich and eating it, because obviously that was her main character trait in her own episode. Obviously, she's a very voracious person by nature. Case in point, she tried to eat Eustace that one time, which doesn't explain why she's here. But in any case, I'll get to all of that later. But in any case, Muriel after discovering Black Pearl Queen demands to know why she's there, since Eustace pointed out it was a men's club. But at which point, the villains realize she knows too much and actually wind up ambushing her and shackling her to a wall above a pot of boiling water, possibly the Cajun Fox's suggestion, since that was his entire thing. But in case now that they have Muriel restrained, she demands to know where her husband is. But the villains merely tell her that she's not going to have to worry, that she shouldn't worry about her husband, and all she's there for is to actually call to Courage and get him to come down into the basement, which she outright refuses to do until Kat starts messing with her laundry to get her to scream. So yeah, this is actually just a really fun episode for Cats, because he just shows up, and one of the first things he does is actually mess with Muriel's laundry, which is arguably the most evil thing he's done, because anybody who's ever worked with laundry will know that you're not supposed to mix your lights or your darks, and you're not supposed to pour bleach into the laundry, which obviously is what caused Muriel to finally freak out. And Courage actually hears her screaming from the basement, and after grabbing the broth with it and bringing it down in the basement with him, he goes to investigate and does discover Muriel chained up in the basement above a pot of boiling water. At which point Big Toe lands on top of him and begins to try and crush him. And at which point all the villains start remarking all of the ways that Courage had actually defeated them over the series. Obviously Cajun Fox is annoyed at the fact that that Courage boiled him alive. And Big Toe obviously got defeated by being licked. And everybody else just kind of chimes in because they don't really need a specific reason. They just want to see Courage dead because they faced off with him once or twice and he's gotten in their way, and they're very angry about that. But in case Big Toe proceeds to put the squeeze on Courage, but Cats actually decides to offer up a different solution, which is that they play a game of dodgeball against Courage decide to, as part of his pre-game sport, before they decide to actually slowly kill him. So Courage winds up playing a 5v1 dodgeball match against all of his villains, with Leclerc actually just taking up the mantle of referee, which he doesn't call any of the fouls that ensue throughout the entire game. So yeah, it's very rigged from the start in the villain's favor, because all six of them actually gang up on Courage, and Eustace just sits back to watch as they kill Courage slowly. So it actually starts off with Cats actually throwing a dodgeball rigged with spikes that just barely misses Courage's head, and then the werewolf is about to go in to throw a dodgeball, but then he decides to eat it instead, and Cats merely just remarks that he just wonders out loud why the werewolf is even there at all. And he's not the only one. I think a lot of people watching this episode were very confused as to why the werewolf was even included in Balls of Revenge, because obviously the werewolf is the odd man out of the group. He's one of the only villains in this episode who didn't have an evil plan when he was defeated by Courage. Courage just happened to be at the wrong place at the right place at the right time, and actually stopped him from actually turning Muriel into a werewolf. The werewolf doesn't have an evil plan. He's just here, and it's possible that his reason for revenge is that he figured out Courage tricked him with a costume. I couldn't really tell you why he's here. He just is. But in any case, the Cajun Fox then proceeds to use with Big Toe's help, actually flings a spoon of hot pierogies, which she remarks are extra spicy and will cause any sort of pain, and they wind up flying into Courage's mouth and they wind up burning him. So Courage winds up burning him around in circles while he tries to put his mouth out, and he eventually tries to drink some of the nondescript sport swill, which he winds up chugging and spitting out, but this enables the Black Pearl Queen to actually emerge from her domain and throws various sea creatures at Courage, one of which is a clam that winds up getting stuck on his head, and the villains just take the opportunity to lap at him while he's in pain. But in case, as Courage is trying to face off against trying to get the clam off of his head, basically, Wormhole actually tunnels underneath the ground and actually bites Courage and starts shaking him around like a doll. But it's around this point where they decide to actually call for halftime, and Courage actually at which point the Duck brothers show up again for no apparent reason. I think the joke is that people were confused because the voice actor for the Ducks is very much doing an impression of Ringo Starr, and I think that's the joke. The joke is that they sound like Ringo Starr, so obviously they get their own musical number here, where they do the halftime show and then leave. So at which point Courage then proceeds to actually stall the game, because the laundry actually goes off, and he proceeds to actually go and fix the laundry, which Muriel thanks him for from her shackles on the wall. But in case with laundry now dealt with, the rest of the villains actually proceed to actually continue their assault on Courage, which is finished off by Cats pouring a bunch of dodgeballs in front of Big Toe, who then proceeds to kick a whole onslaught of them at Courage, and he winds up getting full blast from all of them. And Courage does eventually collapse from all of this carnage that's being inflicted on him, because obviously this game was rigged from the start and Courage was never going to win. Courage winds up being defeated as a result of this, at which point the rest of the villains then proceed to prepare their weaponry to actually gang up on Courage and proceed to kill him and finish him off, but with Eustace merely cheering them on, pointing out that he can't wait for the dog to be gone. But Muriel then decides to actually give Courage some last-minute Monday motivation by pointing out that there must be something that he can do better than they can, and that he just has to think it through and actually figure out what he can do. At which point Courage actually does think for a minute and eventually realizes he does have something he can do better than they can, which is screaming really loud. So what he does to defeat all of his enemies once and for all, I kid you not, and this is a bit of a recurring thing, but he lets out a scream. He then proceeds to let out a scream so powerful that it causes the entire basement to collapse. Obviously, the stairs where Eustace is watching the whole thing actually winds up collapsing, and he winds up falling to the floor. While all of the villains, except for the weremole, who winds up climbing inside one of the clamshells that the Black Pearl Queen summons, they all wind up falling into through a hole in the dirt floor of the basement and wind up being defeated that way. And once they're all dealt with, and they all fall into the pit, Courage winds up collapsing from coming to his wounds and collapsing. With the pot that Muriel was over shattering in the process, as were her shackles, and she actually winds up falling to the floor, and then she goes to properly fix the laundry that cats mess with. At which point she celebrates Courage actually having defeated all of his enemies and declares him the victor. And then she proceeds to go over to Eustace and beat him over the head with her rolling pin for summoning a bunch of for both A, lying to her, and B, bringing a bunch of dangerous criminals into her house. And then as punishment, Courage, still badly injured, fresh off his fight with the other villains, he winds up getting Eustace's chair and is allowed to sleep in Eustace's chair, while Eustace is forced to sit on the floor on the blanket that she made for Courage. So yeah, Eustace winds up getting his just desserts in this episode. But in any case, Courage is happy having finally defeated all of his villains, and then he turns on the TV. But then Freaky Fred appears on the TV, calls Courage's name, which causes Courage to scream so loud that the entire house winds up collapsing. And then the episode ends, and Schwick remarks about how he wasn't in the episode and is a little bit annoyed by that. So yeah, this episode just kind of highlights the whole the whole lack of continuity that this series has, because it very much exists on a floating timeline. So let's just unpack this slowly. But in any case, first and foremost, this episode cements Eustace as one of Courage's most dangerous villains, or at least this is his most evil appearance yet, because he obviously assembled the other 6 villains to actually come and take Courage out, and he wound up assembling his own Sinister Six. And then also let's just the fact that what makes a little bit less sense, if you actually want to think about it, is that some of the villains don't really make sense to be here. Obviously Eustace knows, the only villain Eustace actually knows and knows is evil is Cats, and it makes perfect sense for him to be here. But Eustace has met LeQuack but doesn't actually know he's evil. And then in the case of the other 4 villains, he either never met them or was either hypnotized or assimilated. So he never formally met Black Pearl Queen, Big Toe, Cajun Fox, and the weremole. He never officially met any of them. So it doesn't really make sense for them to be there since Eustace doesn't know who they are or why they're there. But also, again, I've already brought this up. It doesn't make sense for the weremole to be here at all. It's because obviously he didn't really have an evil plan that Courage thwarted. He was just there. He was a wild animal, and he wound up infecting Muriel and turning her into a weremole. So yeah, he didn't really have an evil plan. He's just here to fill out the roster. And obviously there's Freakin' Fred who shows up in Ball of Revenge but isn't important. And then Schwick, who is heard at the end of Ball of Revenge but isn't important. And also, I just should mention, out of the entire series, all of the villains that are featured in this episode are season 1 villains, which makes sense because I think they had because those were some of the more iconic villains from the very early series. So it makes sense for them to be here. But yeah, this episode is just fun. It's a really fun episode to just commemorate the 100th episode of Courage the Cowardly Dog by just bringing all of Courage's worst villains and Eustace into one place and having them face off against them one last time as one last hurrah for the villains to actually try and get their revenge against Courage. Because I mean, in Cats and LeQuack's case, they've had a couple of tries, so obviously they would be kind of desperate for revenge. And then obviously a lot of the other villains are one-off villains who never appeared in an episode afterwards. So it makes sense that if they would give them the opportunity, they would actually show up. But yeah, this episode is just fun, if a little stupid, and that's kind of the point. I mean, the episode isn't really supposed to be really. The episode obviously the series doesn't really have a very firm continuity. Obviously the timeline is all over the goddamn place. Case in point, there are a couple of characters who either don't exist yet or aren't supposed to be there, who just show up in an episode after for no apparent reason, obviously. But Absolute Dealer is a very perfect example of that, because he shows up in an episode one other time, even though he doesn't appear until 1,000 years after effect. But yeah, this episode just kind of brings back all of the iconic villains, and I do kind of like it for that, even if the episode itself doesn't make any goddamn sense. But in any case, that's my review of Courage the Cowardly Dog. What did you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter in the description below. Be sure to check out my Patreon in the description below as well if you want to help support the show. It's only a couple bucks a month. It does really help me out, and you guys get access to a bunch of cool perks. I'm always saying thanks, so be sure to check this out in the description below as well. Also, be sure to check out my Patreon if you want to help support the show. It's only a couple. You've already said that, but be sure to check out my Twitch in the description. I'm trying to grow a milestone over there, and I do stream fairly frequently, like once a week or so. But yeah, just go check that out. Link is down in the description. I stream every Sunday, 2:30 Eastern Standard Time. So just check that out and make sure you don't miss it. And finally, if you want to see more content from me, then be sure to check out the videos linked in the end screen. The top video is the most recent one. May or may not be this one. Or so Bob released a video recommended to you based on what you've already seen from me. So yeah, just go check both of those videos out. Both of those may or may not also be Courage related. So just go check those out. That link is down in the description. And also, finally, be sure to check out my Discord again. I'm going to be doing my grand finale of Courage Month over there. We're going to be watching the movie live. And then we're also going to be reviewing it at some point later down the road. Maybe either that day or the next morning. I don't know. But in any case, just go check that out. Be sure to go follow me over there. I was going to do it on Twitch, but Twitch is dumb. It doesn't let you review pay to rent movies. I don't understand why that is, but in any case, we're going to be doing a little bit of a change and a bit of a revision. So be sure to go check that out down in the description. But in any case, thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!